Hi there, welcome to the Bonsai Stuff podcast. This is the podcast for bonsai lovers all over the globe, all united by our passion for these little trees in pots. I'm Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu. Hope you've had a fantastic week in bonsai. I know it's been very busy. As I look down at my hands, I can tell that I'm getting close to the end of repotting season. Hands are cracked, look like concrete as hands. They've got dirt ingrained in them. They are sore, they're tired. But it's been a good season this season. Lots of trees again look like they're getting repotted for lots of different people through the workshop. Lots of my trees again, which is lovely and it's positive. I love it when I get to take the trees out of the pot and have a look at them, get to see how they've developed, how they've moved underneath the soil surface since it's been last repotted. 2-3 years, whatever it is. And it's positive. It's really nice to see that. It's that pat on the back that you get, or I get anyway. I get a lot of self-satisfaction out of it, knowing that the trees are looking fantastic on top, the root system's looking fantastic, and everything that you aim for, everything I strive for is through built on a solid foundation of this root system, and knowing that that's there, it means that the trees just keep taking steps forward. And when I work on lots of different trees and see maybe trees that are coming from nursery pots and then moving across. I can talk about it with confidence with people to say, look, this is what will happen. If you do this, this is what will happen. And I know it's that whole trust me moment, and you talk about bonsai soils and all that sort of thing, and it's difficult. It's a tough decision to make, to transition to something which is a bonsai soil, a proper bonsai soil, not a garden soil or not a potting mix or anything like that, but a proper bonsai mix. It takes a bit of guts. It's a leap of faith when you first do it, but then when you've done it and you see the impact of it, it's like, yes, that's brilliant. That's why we do it. That's exactly why we do it. So in this episode of the podcast, I want to talk about soil mix, and I want to ask a simple question that I've been asked quite a lot over this repotting season, that will changing your soil mix fix your problems? So I want to talk a bit about that, and I also want to talk about some repotting tales. As we do get to the end of it, there's some great experiences and not so great experiences that I've come across that I'll just share with you in the podcast. So let's get into it. Okay, so repotting. It's all that's on my mind at the moment, because that's the vast majority, probably 95% of what I'm doing in the workshop at the moment is repotting trees. And I just want to start. I saw some comments around the place about how repotting windows and you've got lots of time. And I just want to give my 2 cents on repotting and when I repot and when I don't repot, which is probably more important. The trees store resources, build their strength up, go to sleep during the winter period, and then as the days start getting longer, they start to release those stored resources and they start to sprout, they start to grow, whatever tree it is, and whatever time that happens for you, when they start releasing those stored resources, it's getting to the end where it's too late. You want to catch them just before they do that. And so, my repotting windows, July, August for vast majority of my exotics. I think almost all of my exotics, except for some figs and anyway, the vast majority of trees in my yard get repotted during that July, August period. Now, wherever you are, you have to pick when the trees are going to start waking up and start growing, whatever part of the world you're at or whatever part of Australia you're in. It might be that your repotting window is a little bit later. It might be that it's August, September. Or, it might be that you've got to have everything done and locked away before the end of July, because everything, it's warmer and everything wakes up a lot quicker, so your dormancy period's a lot shorter. So therefore, you can't just listen to some nufty like me and have them say to you, okay, so you should repot always during this time of the year. It's specific for you. So when you get opinions from people that say, oh, no, you can repot for the next 6 months. Yeah, of course you can. Physically you can. Is it the right time and the best time to be repotting your trees? And that's the question you've got to ask. Is it the best time to be repotting your trees? And no, it's not. And that's what I'm starting to see now as I'm talking about this more with Repotting Tales, but I see a lot of trees now as I take them out of the pots where there's a lot of new roots that's starting to appear. So where at the start of August, I do my conifers, my pines, junipers, that sort of thing during this August period for me, the last month of the winter period, and at the start of the month, there was very little root growth, a little bit here, a little bit there. But now, vast majority of trees that I'm taking out of pots to look at, yeah, certainly. And the buds, they sometimes they look like they've just started to push a little bit, so it's hard to tell when that happens. But if you wait for buds to pop and leaves to open, it's too late. It's you've missed the boat. Like as far as I'm concerned, and this is my podcast, so I can talk about it however I want. But I thoroughly believe that if you can catch the tree when they're just about to release those stored resources and then root prune and then lock them in, get it all set up perfectly, then you can rest assured that the tree is then going to start growing new roots, new foliage, and everything moves without skipping a beat. Once those new roots have all started to appear, regardless of whether you think that it's woken up or not, it definitely has. It's started to push out those new roots to start feeding and being able to fund the new growth that it's about to get. Once that happens, then the bank on the tree starts to reduce down, starts to spend the stored resources that it's got, and you go in there and you start cutting off those roots. And if you leave it too late, like let's say it's another month that I wait before I repot, then there's a cost. You can still physically do it, but for me, in my yard with my trees, if I repotted a pine in a month's time, doesn't mean that I won't do it, but I've got to be completely aware that there is a cost because that tree has suddenly spent some of its resources, and I'm going to go in there and cut off those new roots because they're always around that periphery, the external part of the root ball, which is the first part that you start dismantling. And I know that if I do that, then I'm going to have an impact on the tree going forward. So for me, just a reminder, catch the trees just prior to waking up, whatever time that is, wherever you are around this beautiful, beautiful planet of ours, and repot at that time. So if your trees wake up when it's much warmer, then wait till it gets a bit warmer. If they wake up when the daylight hours start getting slightly longer, then repot when the daylight hours start getting slightly longer. Whatever it is, whatever suits your environment, wherever you are, that's the trigger. So don't always listen to people. I know people may be well-meaning when they pass on this information, but there's a cost when it's done at the wrong time of the year. Anyway, so now, will changing your soil fix your bonsai? It's such a common thing that I get asked. If I go to this mix that you use, if I go to the scoria, pumice and pine nuggets mix, will it fix all these problems I've got on my tree? And the answer is probably not, because when you think about your bonsai, when you consider this tree that we've taken and we put into a pot, into an environment that is completely controlled by us, 100% controlled by us, but not when you put them in the ground, they have control over their own destiny. You plant a new tree in the ground, you'll water it for a certain period, and then all of a sudden you'll see the tree start to stand on its own roots and be able to support itself, and it will start searching for water wherever it needs it and nutrients, and it's off and racing. And from then on, you very rarely have to water the trees that are in the ground because they become self-sufficient. When we put them in a pot, that's definitely not the case. So we have to make sure that we're providing everything that we should to the tree. All right, so changing your soil mix is only one part of the equation, and this is a reminder, a refresher for everybody that your trees, your bonsai, they have certain needs. They have things that they have to get, and if they don't, then things start turning pear-shaped. They won't thrive in an environment that isn't a perfect situation for them. So if they get maybe half an hour's sunlight per day, and you've put them in a beautiful soil mix that's cost you a fortune, and it's what the experts recommend, and that's what such and such is using, whatever it is, but they're not getting enough sunlight, well, that's going to have a massive impact on the tree. You change the soil mix and you don't provide water to the tree when it needs it, then how can the root system grow and thrive? You've really got to look at your soil makeup that you use and ask yourself a question: what is the purpose of this soil? What am I, whatever it is, whatever it is that you've got in your pots right now. What's the purpose of that? Are you just providing a medium to house the tree? Is that all it is? It shouldn't be. The soil mix should be part of the equation or part of the great plan, the master plan that you've got for the tree to build a really solid foundation of roots. And we want those roots. So when it comes time to water, transpiration, flow of water through the tree, when it comes time for the tree to take up that water, it's got excess capacity to do it. The tree will just soak it up straight away. Then that also then rolls into how we fertilize our trees. If you've got a really, really poor root system on that tree, it doesn't matter how much fertilizer you're pouring onto it. Liters and liters and liters. You could be giving it 400 tea bags every week, brand new ones, and doing everything you possibly can to the tree. But if that root system hasn't got the ability to use the fertilizer to take it up, to make it part of its system, then you're honestly just wasting your time, and you're wasting the tree's time. So your soil mix is there to generate a great foundation, a basis for the tree. If you look at your soil and say to yourself, okay, I want this to be wet when it's 45 degrees in summer, which is only, thank goodness, only a few months away. When it gets to be those scorching hot days, you want to turn around to yourself and say, my soil mix is here to make sure that tree stays wet. That's so far from what you should be doing, in my opinion, that it's not funny, because you want to have a root system, an engine for the tree that has the ability to take up water very quickly, rapidly, because there's just fine feeder roots that are absolutely everywhere. You want a medium which is going to hold that moisture there for the tree, but not keep it to the point where it's going to be like a marsh. If you look at where the tree that you've got as a bonsai, you look at where that grows really well, they don't grow in swamps. They don't grow in boggy marshes. They won't grow in the middle of a dam on an island that's flooded and it's only a few centimeters away from its root system, because that's not what makes them thrive. That's not where they're going to grow. So why would you, when you put it into a bonsai pot, why would you change that environment for the tree and have it that it's sitting in the soil where it's constantly wet and damp, and it's not going to encourage root growth. If anything, it's going to cause root rot. It's going to cause the tree to start going backwards slightly, initially slightly, and then as it gets on further and further. When you get to the hot days, the thing that saves your tree is having moisture in the tips of your foliage. That's it. How do you get that moisture to the tips of the foliage? You have the root system that's able to take up water and keep pumping it through the tree system. I hear it all the time. Oh, with that soil mix, I think I'm going to have to water a hell of a lot more. No, you don't. Like, I think that's such a common misconception that you use an open mix, so therefore you've got to water it 40 times a day. It might feel like that, but the particles that are in there are going to be absorbing that water. They're going to be holding it for the tree's root system to come along and go, thank you very much, Mr. Pumice. I'll take that now, thank you. I'll use that, and I'll move on to the next piece of pumice that's holding a little bit of water in its surface for me. So even though you have a feeling that it's not working, now when I take trees out of pots that have been put into soil mix, and when I see people take trees out of pots that have been in a really nice growing mix that have been there for a couple of years, and you see their face and go, wow, it's like it's out of one of the books. You see photos of these things overseas and their root systems look amazing. It's like, well, that's my tree now. I've got that root system. It's not hard to do. It's not impossible to get, but you want to focus on a soil medium that's going to give you strong root growth and provide a facility for the tree's roots to take water without retaining water. Trees love water. They just don't want to stay wet. They don't want to stay boggy because, like I said, that's not how they're going to grow in the real world, and it's definitely not going to be how they're going to thrive and do really well inside of a bonsai pot. So your soil mix is super important. I I have my own preferences. I don't keep it. It's not a secret what soil mix I use. I freely pass it on to a million people, but it's not going to fix your problem. It's not the magic ticket from Willy Wonka's chocolate factory that you're going to get and go, wow, this has just solved everything for me because I've used this new soil. It's just part of it. It's part of the plan. So you need to look at the complete environment where your bonsai is living. Is it perfect for the tree? Well, then, yes, the soil mix will make a big difference. If the tree is living in an environment where it's not thriving and it's going backwards at 1,000,000 miles an hour, that soil mix won't be the saviour. It just won't. The environment that your trees are kept in is so important, and soil mix is just one piece of that puzzle. If you look and there's 10 pieces to the puzzle floating around, soil mix is just purely one of those. Massive piece of the puzzle, but it's not going to solve all the problems if you've got a weakened tree because of its environment. Repotting Tales. Got a few. Got a lot of them. I started mentioning before that when I take trees out of pots now, I'm starting to see a hell of a lot more of these new white roots that are starting to grow. And it puts a smile on my face, but it also sends a shiver up my spine because it means that window of repotting in my ideal environment situation is closing, and it's closing rapidly. This comes out. There's, let's say, less than 2 weeks from you listening to this podcast until that window for me, it shuts. I don't like to repot in my. I keep pushing it, but anyway, I like to do things in my situation that are best for the tree, which you'll all know by now if you've listened to the podcast for more than probably one or 2 minutes. You'll know that my focus is purely on the tree. So I close the window for repotting at the end of winter. That's it. You can go further, yeah, sure, but not going to. So I put a lot of pressure on myself to make sure that when it gets to the last day of winter, I can turn around and go, yep, done. Go and crack a nice cold beer and say, that's it, I'm finished. The season's over. Now it's time to move on to spring pruning. That's the next thing that's on the cards. So I do get this smile across my face when I look at the new roots, thinking, oh wow, look at this. The trees are really starting to wake up. It's a lovely time of year, but then it's like, oh geez, how many more have I got left to do? How many physical days have I got left that I can dedicate towards repotting, and will I make it? Will I get this done in time? And do a quick calc, quickly count, make sure I've got the soil mix that I need, make sure I've got everything lined up, and then I go, yep, okay, I can do it. But it's going to be busy. So when I do start getting that cold sweat up the back of my spine, also have a look at the trees that I have repotted, and you've done a hell of a lot. There's however many trees that have been repotted so far. You're onto the last stretch now. If you've done all those in the lead up, then yep, sure you can get it. So one of the tales I wanted to tell was just the other day. You may even be listening to the podcast, but anyway, I got some trees to repot that hadn't been repotted for quite a long time, like long, way too long. Like I'm talking, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. And there was one that was a black pine in one of these cascade pots. Now the tall ones, quite a big pot, like quite wide, quite tall, and deep. Really deep, these things. So when you go to remove the tree from the pot, the sickle tends to go down part of the way, maybe less than a third, maybe a quarter of the way down the pot, but then the rest of it you just can't get to. And these cascade pots are an absolute nightmare as far as I'm concerned. They're of all the pots, I've heard stories about oval pots that are sort of bulging on the sides. They've got the root system grows into there. I'd take one of those any day of the week over a deep cascade pot, because getting the trees out of these deep cascade pots is just a nightmare. And throw in the fact that this thing hadn't been repotted for God knows how long, way too long. The root system had actually glued itself to the side of the pot, which I have never, ever seen before. Like, it's always been a point where you can have it where it will break apart, but it's like resin had come out of the root system and it was actually glued to it. So Long story short, work around the edge with the sickle, get in there and start having to pry this thing up. I've got a piece of dowel in the hole at the bottom of the pot, put that into the tree, and then bounce it down on that to try and push the tree out of the pot. Wouldn't do it, wouldn't budge. So the top of the tree I could feel was starting to move. By this stage, I'd probably got down maybe halfway down this cascade pot, and the cascade pot sits about, 40 centimetres tall, something like that. So I could feel like it was moving at about, probably half the root ball, which for me, that's in a cascade pot, that's probably enough for me to get out and work with, and then, put into new soil and tie it back in. So I used my root rake, the other end of my root rake, the spade end, and put in there like a lever and try and jam this thing out. It wouldn't budge. Seriously, it must have been 45 minutes I was working on this tree, trying to get it out of the pot. My arms are bloody sore. The sickle just couldn't seem to go down far enough. I was using chisels, jamming it down the side of the pots. I've got this bit of dowel in the hole at the bottom, banging it on the ground, trying to push the tree out of the pot. Nothing would give. Anyway, eventually I could get it where I could jimmy up, half the root ball and have it break off from the other half that's stuck in the pot. Oh, we know that's fine. I've got enough root ball there to work with, enough viable roots. That's easy. Repotting this will be a charm. Okay, so now all I've got to do is get this other half of the root ball out of this damn cascade pot. Must have been at least another half an hour working on this thing, chiseling out. I had to get a chisel and the rubber mallet and run the chisel down the side of the pot between the roots and the pot and work my way around, and it broke off in small sections. Like I just could not get this thing to give up. And in the end, the last section, which would have been about 5 centimetres of roots right down the very bottom of the pot, that all had to come out in one hit, and it was fair dinkum stuck. I could see where the root system had contacted the side of the pot and left all these lines all the way around the inside edge of the pot because it had been there so long, and that pressure from that root ball was so immense that it had plastered itself to that and basically crushed the root system on the outside to sit around the edge of the pot and become actually part of the pot. So it was all up about an hour and a half just getting this tree out of the pot, having a cup of tea, gathering my thoughts again after being pushed to the edge of wanting to just smash this pot with the rubber mallet, and then work the root ball, put it back in there, and it's all back in there nicely. But it's that whole window, the time frame for repotting, making sure that you're being reasonable about it. A lot of trees that I take out that have been in pots for a very, very long period of time, I look at them and think there's a gamble here. Right? So if you imagine you've got a root ball that's, let's say it's 10 centimetres deep when you take it out of the pot, what I find is that root system gets right down to the very bottom of the pot. And these are all trees that have been put into a pumice-based mix. So really, really good mix was used. There's no doubt about that. But like any kind of any root system that you've got, once it starts running out of space to grow, it starts wrapping itself around the bottom of the pot. And I'd find in a 10 centimetre pot, there'd probably be 5 centimetres of root system that was just like a mat that you basically broke away that had grown separate from the rest of the root ball. So you're effectively cutting off half of the root system that's in the pot right now before you can repot it back again. And that's risky, So I had to reduce foliage mass as well in line with the root system, because this was, it's touch and go for a few of these trees, and the care that has to happen on those trees post repotting has to be spot on. It has to really be good. I use plant starter, which is going to help reduce shock for the trees once they've been repotted. I don't use it all the time. I really only use it on trees that I'm concerned about. But all these trees that have been such a long time between repotting, and it was I'd classify it as significant root loss. There had to be. There was no other way. There's no way you could keep this big, thick mat of roots. So now these trees really have got to go back to square one. So a lot of the foliage had been allowed to grow. They're a bit dishevelled. Had to put them back in line. So there's big, massive cutbacks, trying to reduce the foliage, reduce the structure on the tree so it mimicked the root system that I had left, and just to push everything back in. And now it's time for the trees, there's quite a few of them, just to draw a breath, to be out of the elements now for a good 3-4 week period, under the benches, out of the wind, out of the sun, out of the elements, somewhere where they're not going to get extreme heat or extreme cold. Not that we're hot at the moment in Melbourne, but I don't want any kind of impact from the environment on these trees. And I just want them to slowly release the stored resources, start growing new roots, and then hopefully everything sort of starts to move and come on in leaps and bounds. I pride myself on doing the best I possibly can whenever it doesn't matter what I do with bonsai, but it's always to a certain standard, to a certain level. And I've talked about it before, where when you get tired, it's time for drawing breath. Sit back, cup of tea, whatever it is, put your feet up, just have a rest. Anyway, one of those things that happened to me again the other day, repotting after a big day, lots of trees. It must have been about 12 or 13 trees in the day or something like that. All big buggers, heavy, and I was getting right to the very end. I was thinking more about packing up the tools than the tree that was in front of me. And I tied the tree in, and I do this thing where once I've done my 4-way tying on the trees, I sort of grab it by trunk or whatever and pick it up and move it, and just make sure that it's secured fast in the pot. It's just a final check for me. Anyway, I did it, tie the tree in, grab the trunk, lift it up, and bloody the tree nearly yanked out of the pot. It's like, bloody, gee, what's happened here? I've done the 4-way tying, but I hadn't done it properly. And this is where you've got to keep doing the same thing at the highest level and I am harsh on myself. So I got really, really bloody cross at myself. What had happened is one of the tie-in wires, the first one that I'd started with, I'd lent it across to the second wire and twisted it, no worries, but I didn't take the slack out of it, and I am fastidious on grabbing the wire as I drag it across the tree, pull it with the pliers to take the slack out of it. I always do it, but I didn't do it with this one because it was the last tree of the day, and like I said, I should have stopped at the tree beforehand, so I hadn't taken the slack out of it. So when I twisted it, there was still a lot of movement in the tree, and I thought, in the wire, there's still a lot more, give. So anyway, I had to go back to square one, take the tree out of the pot, take the soil out, put in new tie-in wires, put the soil back in there, take the slack out of the wire, grab the wire, twist it around, and anyway, it worked. But it's just that reminder to everybody, I suppose, that when you do get tired, especially when you're doing repotting, or when I talk about not rushing the process and making sure that you do it to the best of your ability. Hasty decisions. We talked about that last week. It's really, it comes back to me all the time. Little things that I do that I maybe shouldn't do. It makes me stop, correct whatever it is I'm doing, and then go, right, now let's go forward from here and let's make sure that sort of rubbish doesn't happen anymore. And just like that, folks, that is the end of episode 32, season 7 of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. Thank you all for listening in. Thank you very much to the sponsors that support the podcast in any way that they do, through donations or buying me a cuppa or anything like that. It's greatly appreciated. It really is, and it means the absolute world that there's so much love and respect for this talk that we do for all of us about these little trees that we just adore. So thank you for listening in. I hope your repotting season is going smashingly well. I hope you're finished, because then you can have a bit of downtime before the craziness of spring gets here and we start fertilizing, and the whole focus changes and moves on. But if you haven't repotted, then this is the last chance. You've got a couple of weeks now to really maybe just do a final look over everything. If in doubt, if it's been more than 2 years and you've got question marks on whether you should or whether you shouldn't, my advice is you should. Don't miss the opportunity now, because I guarantee you, if you're in doubt now, wait till it's the heart of summer and it's absolutely bloody scorching hot, and you're looking at the tree going, geez, I wish I'd repotted that. I really wish I'd done the right thing. So if in doubt, get it out of the pot, have a look at the roots, repot it into a nice soil, give it a freshen up, let it really take leaps and bounds ahead. I do look at keeping the trees in the pots for a little bit longer when they're right at the pointy end of their development. But But there's a cost to that as well. If things do go pear-shaped and the trees start going backwards, so my advice is, if in doubt, give it a repot, and when you've got it, just give it the once over. Make sure it's on track for where you want it to get to, and I guarantee you it'll be a stronger tree for you looking after it. Anyway, give your trees a big cuddle for me. Make sure you're spending a lot of time with them at the moment, and the sunshine is starting to come. It's a bit chilly. There's rain. There's whatever, but spring's just around the corner now. I can smell it. You walk around the gardens and you can see the blossoms on the trees. You can hear me smiling through the podcast. I love it. It's getting warmer. Yoo-hoo. Anyway, until next time, as always, happy bonsai.